I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The
More.
You
No.
Podcast.
Today I want to discuss aspects of frustration that are shared in Judith Orloff's book, Emotional Freedom. Frustration is something you must learn to handle, like fear and failure in life. You must be aware of when you're becoming frustrated and know how to deal with your frustration. If not, it will hinder your ability to be present. It will hinder your relationships. It will hinder your ability to perform at your highest level, and much more. So I'm going to go through how frustration and patience feels, a quiz to assess how frustrated you are in the present moment, and then some action steps for taking charge of a frustrating situation, as well as handling a frustrating person. And all of this will allow you to properly handle frustration in your life. So I'm first going to go through how the energy of frustration feels, and then from there how the energy of patience feels. So frustration feels tense, prickly, and like you're spinning your wheels. You also feel frayed at the edges. You're deadly serious, restless, and tiring. And your life feels like a lead balloon of disappointment. And the worst part of how the energy of frustration feels is that you're trapped in your head and not intuitive. And now with this being said, the mirrored feeling of frustration is patience. And I now want to go through what the energy of patience feels like. Patience feels respectful and appreciative. Patience is generous, and it's conveying there's enough time for someone. It's like a big, slow exhale. It's soft and embracing. And lastly, it feels intuitively and spiritually on center. The energy of frustration and patience are drastically different, and by being aware of each, you can work towards being more patient and less frustrated. And now that we understand what frustration feels like, I want to go through Judith's frustration quiz, and it gauges your success at coping with frustration. It's a series of 7 questions to ask yourself that I'm now going to go through. Number 1, am I often frustrated and irritable? 2, do I typically respond to frustration by snapping at or blaming others? Next, number 3 is, do I self-medicate letdowns with junk food, drugs, or alcohol? Then number 4 is, do my reactions hurt other people's feelings? 5 is, when the frustration has passed, do I usually feel misunderstood? After that, number 6 is, during a hard day at work, do I tend to lose my cool? And finally, number 7 is, when I'm disappointed, do I often feel unworthy or like giving up? To score the quiz, if you answered yes to between 5 and 7 questions, it indicates an extremely high level of frustration in your life. 3 to 6 yeses indicates a high level, 2 yeses indicates a moderate level, 1 yes indicates a low level, and 0 yeses suggests that you're dealing with frustration successfully. And so now that we understand what frustration feels like, as well as having assessed our level of frustration in life, I now want to go through some emotional action steps to take charge of a frustrating situation. You should try one or more of these options to reset the energetic tone of your interactions. First, use humor. Laughter is a quick way to break the spell of frustration, as well as become more patient with what is. It emotionally raises your spirits, softens your defenses, and spreads positive vibes. Next, you should focus on the positive. Changing your attitude changes your energy. And finally, you should try to go with the flow. When there's no escaping a frustrating situation, don't fight what it is. By applying these, it helps with building patience by behaviorally and energetically raising the bar on how you deal with frustration. And finally, I want to go through 4 rules for communicating with frustrating people. And before you apply these 4 rules, you should always take a breath first before you meet, and calm yourself down. So rule number 1 is to focus on a specific issue, and don't escalate or mount a personal attack. You should focus on leading with how the behavior makes you feel, rather than how you think the other person is wrong. Rule 2 is to listen non-defensively without reacting or interrupting. It's a true sign of respect to listen to the other person's point of view, and there's value in avoiding an aggressive tone or body language. After that, rule 3 is intuit the feelings behind the words. And what this means is to attempt to be empathetic and feel what the other person feels, and understand what they're going through. And lastly, rule number 4 is to respond with clarity and compassion. By doing so, this attitude takes others off the defensive, and it will make them more comfortable. Frustration is something that you must be able to handle, and by understanding what frustration is, assessing your level of frustration, and taking action steps to handle frustrating situations and people in your life, will positively transform your life. And I know this from personal experience. You no doubt must be aware of all of this in order to put yourself down the path of crafting a life of significance.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The
More.
You
No.
Podcast.